So a student who seems disorientated, maybe they easily get lost, they forget instructions. Students that might take a little bit longer to do activities, or maybe they're easily distracted. There can be many sensory reasons why we have some students who seem disorientated. So let's think about some of the senses. So for anyone who's hypersensitive, it can be quite easy for them to miss instructions and to forget what they're doing because they're so overwhelmed with the sensory information that's going on around them. So if they're hypersensitive to auditory input, maybe they're focusing so hard on trying to reduce out that sound, not become overwhelmed by that noise, that they seem to miss instruction. They seem to forget what they're doing, but actually it's because they're focusing so hard on trying to reduce that extra sound stimulus. It's exhausting for them. It's overwhelming. It can be the same for visual input. If someone's hypersensitive to visual information, maybe they've missed those instructions because they were so distracted with things that were going around them. They were trying to avoid that visual input. So they were looking away, they're closing their eyes, they've got a hood up, they've got something to reduce that visual input, because when they're walking down the corridor, as soon as they look up, the light's reflecting off the corridor and it's too overwhelming. Or it's reflecting off a display board and it's really painful because the way that reflections can be really overwhelming for people who are hypersensitive. It might be for someone who's hypersensitive to vestibular input, so that movement, as soon as someone's getting up and walking and moving throughout a space, it's too much for them. Often for people who are hypersensitive to vestibular input, they might seem dizzy, they might seem reluctant to follow instructions. Again, it can apply to people who seem disorientated. It might be the fact that actually I'm already receiving too many movement sensations. So imagine feeling really, really dizzy. As soon as I try and think about where I'm going and what I'm doing, I might seem lost because I can't quite see or feel where I'm going. So this idea of being disorientated can relate to so many of the senses, because any of the senses can overwhelm us, and when someone's overwhelmed, they'll find it really, really difficult to concentrate. For other people, I want us to start to think about people who are passive at recognising their own sensory input. So we're very good at recognising seekers and avoiders, so people who are hypersensitive and hyposensitive, because we can see those characteristics. They're really obvious and that's what we need to learn from. But for people who are passive, they find it difficult, their body finds it difficult to understand what these messages is or what their body needs. So it might seem that someone who's passive and has a really high threshold, so they need loads and loads of input, actually aren't receiving enough sensations in order to be able to focus and remember where they're going to. And so they're disorientated because they don't actually know, because they haven't received enough stimulation in order to be able to focus and retain that information. So what can we do? Let's try exercises. Let's try lots of ways of giving someone lots of sensory input. So if someone's passive, maybe it's that they're passive to the vestibular, so the physical movement. So disorientation is the fact that I'm not quite sure where I'm going, because when I haven't got enough movement sensations, my visual sense finds it difficult to make sense of what's going on around me as well. Ways that we can support people, lots of regular prompts, whether it's visuals, whether it's on technology, whether it's in books, whether it's in timetables. We put times in there, we can put words in there, we can put pictures in there, whatever's relevant to our students' level of learning. Vibrations are a really quick way to alert, so it might be that while they're seated they use something like a massaging cushion, or maybe as they're walking around in the classroom, in the college, they've got something which they can squeeze, which gives them some kind of physical alerting, so my proprioceptive input, but maybe also massages as well. You can get lots of massages now, £2 or £3. When you press a button it starts to massage, or when you squeeze it, it now massages. They're really, really great just to carry around in your bag to give yourself that extra input. It might be that smells need to be used to alert. So pop a smell in a pot, something that's alerting, something that's refreshing, something like mint. It's going to be really, really great. If they like mint, obviously the smell's going to be personalised to the person, so you'll know them best. Try that and see, but make sure you contain smells. Don't use aromatherapy diffusers where then the smell is in the whole space and everyone has to smell it, because guaranteed you as the teacher is probably going to be the one that's not going to want to smell that smell all day. Lots of movement, whether it's movement breaks in the classroom, whether it's the fact that you want them to walk around before they come back into the class before the next lesson starts. And then maybe start to think about other things, so a map of interests. So it might be that they help to tell you what are the sensory inputs, the sensory systems that they find really engaging, that they really enjoy, that they know that their body needs. So a map of interests would be someone who likes to listen to music when they're in a classroom. It helps them to take in that input, but also while they're listening they like to squeeze. Or maybe if we're thinking in university, a student that likes to chew on gum while they're listening to someone giving them instructions or a lecture, that may well help them to take in auditory input. Someone else might like to smell their own smell on their sleeve, because smell is the best way of reassuring them, of helping them to bring all of their senses together so that they can learn and they've got enough input to be able to recognise and regulate themselves throughout the day at school.